You visit them in museums. The glorious landscapes, the serene cityscapes, the romantic ruins of the 19th century. You're looking at the most beautiful lie ever crafted. The greatest painters of the era were secret agents, commissioned by the Cabal to paint over the devastation of the mud flood and rewrite the visual history of the planet. We have forensic evidence, microscopic analysis of classic 19th century paintings that clearly reveals a hidden layer of paint concealing Tartarian ruins, massive technological debris, and even giant skeletal fragments beneath the final masterpiece. The artists who resisted were eliminated. Their genuine works, paintings that showed the chaotic reality of the mud flood, were destroyed or hidden in private vaults, replaced by falsified works that normalize the new, clean timeline. This documentary will expose the Light Scrambler Artifact, a Tartarian device used to confuse early cameras and decode the hidden architectural blueprints embedded in famous paintings. Watch until the very end, subscribe this channel, like this video, and you will learn the secret auction house that sells the destroyed, original works of the resistant artists. The conspiracy is framed on canvas. After the mud flood, the elite faced the impossible task of erasing the memory of the immense devastation. They could fake photographs, but the established, permanent visual record was the painting. They commissioned famous artists to become visual censors. The artists were paid colossal sums to paint scenes of tranquil countryside or bustling, orderly cities, where the half-buried Tartarian ruins were either completely erased or subtly disguised as ancient Roman ruins or picturesque hills. The visual manipulation was systematic. The next segment will expose the shocking truth about the 19th century landscape paintings that show strangely uniform, low-lying hills. They were not natural geography. They were painted records of the massive mud flood sediment dumps. Look at the popular landscape paintings of the 19th century. They are filled with rolling hills, picturesque groves, and serene, clear geography. This is a deliberate fabrication. The artists were ordered to paint a world that did not exist to support the geological lie. The landscapes were painted to neutralize the visual evidence of 1. The mud flood layer. The artists systematically erased the vast, uniform layer of cracked, dry sediment that covered the plains and cities after the catastrophe. 2. The missing forests. They painted lush, ancient forests and massive trees in regions like Siberia, which we know were subjected to the Great Cut military operation. The uniform, low-lying hills often featured in these paintings are, in fact, coded representations of the massive mud flood sediment dumps, the toxic spoil from the excavation of the buried cities. The artists, using their training, were able to represent the true volume of the deposits while disguising them as natural, benign geography. The painting became the official geological record. The artists were highly paid, but the true technology of the visual lie was hidden in an artifact. The next segment will expose the Light Scrambler Artifact, a Tartarian device used by the elite to deliberately blur and confuse early cameras, ensuring that genuine photographs of the ruins were unusable. The elite needed to suppress the photographic evidence of Tartaria, but they couldn't control every camera. We reveal the Light Scrambler Artifact, a Tartarian device recovered and weaponized by the 19th century Cabal to deliberately pollute the photographic record. This artifact, often described in suppressed logs as a resonating prism or a chromatic interference device, was designed to generate electromagnetic interference across a specific light spectrum. When deployed, it would 1. Blur ruins, cause atmospheric distortion and blurring around colossal stone structures and technological anomalies, making them appear hazy and indistinct in photographs. 2. Induce flare, generate uncontrollable light flares and lens aberrations, ruining otherwise clear photos of artifacts. The 19th century photography community blamed the poor results on primitive cameras or atmospheric interference. The truth is that the Light Scrambler was strategically activated near archaeological sites and buried ruins, ensuring that any genuine record of Tartaria became visually unusable, forcing the media to rely on the controlled, staged images. The Scrambler controlled the light, but the artists left coded architectural secrets in their works. The next segment will reveal how 19th century painters deliberately embedded Tartarian free energy schematics into the backgrounds of portraits and still lives. The architects of the Resistance were not alone. The finest painters of the 19th century also joined the silent resistance, embedding crucial Tartarian blueprints into their masterpieces. Look closely at the elaborate, complex backgrounds of famous 19th century portraits and still life paintings. The ornate window frames, the intricate wallpaper patterns, and the detailed furniture are not just decoration. They contain geometric energy schematics. The painters used these backgrounds to encode 1. Energy formulas, the specific ratios and curvatures of Tartarian free energy components, spires, domes, resonators, were secretly embedded into the decorative patterns. 2. Location maps. The placement and perspective of background elements provided coded directional clues to the sealed Tartarian archives. These codes were brilliant because the 19th century censors only looked at the foreground, the famous subject, or the fruit bowl. They never suspected that the true, technological data was hidden in the visual noise of the wallpaper. The painting became the secret technical manual for the Tartarian resistance. The encoding was meticulous, but the final act of censorship was against the artists themselves. The next segment will expose the chilling truth about the 19th century's massive art forgeries. They were necessary to replace the genuine, truthful works that showed the mud flood as it truly was. The 19th century art market was flooded with forgeries. This was not merely financial crime. It was a systematic, centralized operation to replace the genuine paintings that showed the truth about the mud flood with sanitized fakes. The genuine works of the resistant artists were those that truthfully depicted the chaotic reality, the buried buildings, the scarred landscape, and the desperate poverty of the immediate post-collapse era. The cabal launched a massive forgery hoax to 1. Eliminate evidence. Destroy the original truthful paintings by replacing them with visually similar fakes that contain the approved, clean narrative. 2. Devalue truth. The overwhelming presence of forgeries in the market made it impossible for the public to discern the genuine, truthful works from the manufactured lies. The 19th century art critic became an unwitting agent of censorship, ensuring that the fake, sanitized works were celebrated, while the genuine, truthful records of the Tartarian collapse were relegated to private vaults or outright destruction. The forgery secured the narrative. But the ultimate vulnerability of the artistic lie was in the materials. The final piece of evidence reveals the shocking truth about the 19th century's unique, vibrant pigments. They were not paint. They were Tartarian light-sensitive compounds used for energy collection and concealment. The ultimate vulnerability of the artistic lie lies in the materials used. The next segment will reveal the shocking truth about the 19th century's unique, vibrant pigments. They were not simple paint. They were Tartarian light-sensitive compounds used for energy collection and concealment. The intense, often unnaturally vibrant colors achieved by 19th century painters were a technological anomaly. We believe these pigments were synthesized using Tartarian crystalline compounds that retained unique, light-responsive properties. The artists, unwittingly or not, used these materials to 1. Mask ruins. The chemical composition of the paint allowed the final layer to subtly disrupt the visual clarity beneath, obscuring the Tartarian ruins painted on the underlying layer. 2. Collect energy. The paintings, especially the large landscapes, acted as passive energy reflectors or minor collectors for the local Tartarian grid, a function completely unknown to the public. The official story claims these vibrant pigments were achieved through new chemical processes. The truth is that the chemical formulas were based on seized Tartarian alchemical knowledge. The paint itself was a subtle, technological component of the global cover-up. The pigments lied about the scene, but the true physical evidence of the deception lies in the architecture of the art schools. The next segment will expose the chilling truth about the massive 19th century art academies. They were not schools. They were centralized forgery labs. The massive state-sponsored art academies and schools of the 19th century were not institutions for creative freedom. They were centralized forgery laboratories commissioned by the cabal to mass-produce the sanitized visual history. Look at the scale and secretive nature of these academies. Their structure allowed for 1. Mass production. They trained thousands of artists in the specific techniques necessary to produce accurate, consistent copies of the Tartarian ruins as classical ruins, and the erased geography. Point 2. Standardization of the lie. The curriculum strictly enforced the official, sanitized view of the landscape and history, ensuring that no artist painted the raw, chaotic reality of the mud flood. The most shocking evidence lies in the hidden wings and sealed basements of these academies. These were used to store the destroyed, original works of the resistant artists and the physical blueprints used for the mass production of the forged copies. The Art Academy was the command center for the visual war. The labs produced the forgeries. But the ultimate vulnerability of the artistic lie was in the frames. The next segment will reveal the shocking evidence that the elaborate, ornate 19th century picture frames were not for decoration. They were Tartarian energy stabilizers. Look at the elaborate, heavy, gold leaf frames that encase the greatest paintings of the 19th century. We are told they were aesthetic. This is a scientific lie. The frames were Tartarian energy stabilizers, used to contain and regulate the sensitive, light-responsive pigments. The crystalline materials used in the deceptive pigments made the canvases highly sensitive to electromagnetic fluctuations. The frames were engineered with specific geometric patterns and conductive metals to 1. Dampen energy. The metal core and geometric curves helped neutralize any residual, erratic energy emissions from the pigments. 2. Stabilize the image. They provided a stable magnetic field, ensuring that the visual lie on the canvas remained fixed and did not visibly shift due to energy interference. The 19th century elite, lacking the technical knowledge, simply accepted the ornate frames as a mandatory component of high art. The frame itself was a functional artifact, secretly preserving the lie it enclosed. The frames provided stability, but the artists themselves left a defiant message. The next segment will expose the chilling truth behind the 19th century's massive painting restorations. They were covert operations to remove the encoded symbols left by the resistance artists. The massive art restoration project that plagued the 19th century art world were not benign maintenance. They were covert censorship operations designed to eliminate the final, subtle, encoded messages left by the resistance artists. The paintings that were flagged for restoration were often those that contained the most dangerous secrets. Microscopic Tartarian glyphs embedded in the shadows, or the coded architectural schematics hidden in the backgrounds. The restoration project allowed the cabal to 1. Neutralize codes. The restorers, working under the guise of cleaning, were instructed to surgically remove the microscopic symbols left by the resistance. 2. Apply final layer. They applied a final, non-Tartarian pigment layer over the entire work, completely sealing the truth beneath the last coat of the 19th century lie. The 19th century art restorer was, therefore, not an artist. They were the final censor in the war for the visual past. The restoration secured the visual lie. But the final, most haunting piece of evidence lies in the 19th century portrait of a single artist. A portrait that proves the final, ultimate fate of the artists who tried to reveal the truth. The fate of the artists who resisted the cover-up is sealed in a single, chilling portrait. This final masterpiece, painted by one of the regime's own commissioned artists, is a coded confession of the entire purge. The portrait depicts a famous, resistant 19th century artist, but with subtle, unsettling details, a faint, unnatural bruise on the neck, a subtle tremor in the hand, or a strange, dark background that seems to be closing in on the figure. These details were not accidental artistic choices. They were a final, desperate message from the commissioned painter, who risked everything to 1. Record the crime. The bruises and tremors were coded signals of the violence and coercion used to silence the artist. Point 2. Signal death. The dark, overwhelming background was a symbolic warning that the artist was marked for elimination, a visual epitaph for the fallen truth-teller. This portrait is the ultimate proof that the beautiful facade of 19th century art was built on coercion and murder. The art world was the final, elegant battleground of the Great Reset that we have exposed the pigments, the frames, and the forgery labs. But the ultimate vulnerability of the artistic lie is the secret archive left behind by the resistance artists. The final part will reveal where these forgotten masterpieces are hidden today, that we have exposed the pigments of deception in the forgery labs. But the ultimate vulnerability of the artistic lie is the secret archive left behind by the resistance artists. The final part will reveal where these forgotten masterpieces are hidden today. The artists who resisted the cabal knew their truthful works would be seized or destroyed. They developed a covert plan to preserve the genuine visual record of the mud flood and Tartaria. This involved creating a secret, decentralized archive in non-obvious locations. 1. Diplomatic vaults. Works were entrusted to sympathetic diplomats and ambassadors, stored in secure embassy vaults under the guise of cultural gifts. 2. Obscure libraries. They utilized the deepest, least visited sections of university and private libraries, hiding the works in unmarked portfolios among irrelevant historical documents. This decentralized system ensured that the cabal could never seize the entire archive at once. The existence of these archives proves that the resistance successfully preserved the original, true visual history of the 19th century, waiting for a future generation to uncover it. The architectural and artistic codes were linked by a single artifact, the vibrational symbolism artifact. This Tartarian device was essential for encoding messages into both stone and canvas. This artifact was a small, ornate, crystal lattice device seized from a Tartarian communication hub. Its true function was to generate specific harmonic frequencies that made geometric patterns visible or resonant to those who knew the code. The cabal used this device in reverse. They would place it near Tartarian ruins, allowing the mandated artist to see the underlying geometric structure of the buried building, and then command the artist to paint over that structure with a mundane landscape. The artist was forced to use Tartarian technology to paint the lie. This act of coercion is the ultimate proof of the artist's enforced complicity. To explain the absence of Tartarian ruins in the public eye, the 19th century elite manufactured fake photographs of natural decay. These images were designed to convince the public that the colossal stone structures had simply crumbled due to time and weather. These photographs often showed massive stone walls or columns heavily overgrown with dense, unnatural moss and ivy. This effect was achieved by using fast-acting chemical growth agents to accelerate the decay process. The purpose was simple: normalize oblivion. By showing that the immense ruins of Tartaria had simply been consumed by nature, the controllers extinguished any curiosity about the cause of their disappearance. The photographic deception turned the greatest civilization into a mere quaint ruin. The massive art acquisitions made by wealthy 19th century oligarchs were not about taste or investment. They were covert operations to seize and sequester key works of art that contained the Tartarian codes. Financial titans who controlled the railroads and the oil industry suddenly developed a massive appetite for European landscape and classical art. Their true motivation: 1. Code seizure. They were instructed to purchase any art that contained specific, telltale Tartarian geometry or structural anomalies, guaranteeing the works remained hidden in private, inaccessible vaults. 2. Propaganda funding. Their wealth financed the forgery labs and the obedient artists who created the approved visual history. The 19th century art market was, therefore, not a free market. It was a censorship market, where price was determined by the amount of suppressed truth contained within the canvas. We have exposed the final secrets of the artistic cover-up: the vibrational symbolism artifact, the fake decay, and the oligarchs' secret art acquisitions. The 19th century was defined by a symbolic war, fought on canvas and in stone, to determine the visual memory of the world. The resistance, however, was successful. The coded messages survived in the micro-details of the metalwork and the hidden layers of paint. The truth is available for those willing to look past the beautiful lie. The ultimate lesson is that art is history's final archive. We have revealed the ultimate artistic secrets and the fate of the forgotten masterpieces. If this video has shattered your perception of art history, then subscribe to Epoch Reset, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment below right now. Tell us, do you believe the great 19th century landscape artists were willing participants in the Tartarian cover-up? And which famous masterpiece do you believe is entirely painted over a hidden ruin?